Ben, thanks for joining me here on the For the Love of TO.
Is that what it's called?
For the Love of TO.
That's a great name. Good for you.
I am here with Ben Mulroney, which is actually pretty fascinating because normally you're on the other side doing the interview.
Yes, indeed. But today I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Toronto is a city of 630 square kilometers, with 158 neighborhoods and more than 3 million people, each with their own story to tell. This is For the Love of TO.
You folks all know this, but if you haven't been paying attention, Ben is the host of the Ben Mulroney Show, a nationally syndicated talk radio show on the Chorus Talk Network, which broadcasts live out of 640 Toronto studios on Queen's Quay down at the waterfront. And he also has his own podcast. If you miss him on the radio, folks will know Ben from his time on television, broadcasting days, CTV, E-Talk, and of course, Canadian Idol. But I think most relevant to our conversation today, Ben is a proud and loud and outspoken Torontonian.
Yeah.
For the Love of TO speaks to the optimism and why we do what we do in this chair, in your chair. We're all fighting for a better city. So you grew up in politics, of course. Everybody knows, right? Honorable Brian Mulroney. What was that like growing up in I have to assume that was a political household.
It was. People assumed that that my upbringing was odd and strange, but if you have no point of reference, if you don't know anything else, then it's perfectly normal. And so the dynamics within our family were, what you would expect. There's one parent, depending on the situation or the circumstance. One parent is sort of the macro parent, the other is the micro parent. And even though my parents weren't around, I wrote a piece for one of the newspapers once that, even though my parents weren't present all the time, they were always a presence. Like, I always knew they were watching. I always knew that even if they were on the other side of the world, they were involved and they were implicated in my life. And so, yeah. And also, we were made very aware that the experiences that we were having were unique. We should enjoy them, but also, not for nothing, we didn't do anything to earn them, right? There was nothing special about us except that we were our parents' kids. So they always told us, listen, we love you more than we're capable, but anyone else is capable of loving. In this house, you can do no wrong. We are going to help you in any way we can with our dying breath, because that's what a parent does. But when you leave this house, you are not special. And on top of that, because of who you are and because of what your name is, people will assume things about you that you're going to have to dissuade them of. They're going to assume that you're lazy. They're going to assume that you're entitled. They're going to assume that you're rude. They're going to assume a lot of things about you. And they're going to assume that everything you have was given to you. And there's plenty. I mean, you'll never go back to the earliest interviews I ever did. The Mulroney name opened every door I walked through. Of course it would, because that's the world. And I would have had to have been the dumbest human being on earth not to walk through that door, because anybody would walk through that door. But the question is, what do you do when you're on the other side of that door? And I've been in media for 25 years, and that is not because the media love my dad. Right. I promise you that.
Right. So it opens doors, but then when you go through that, you got to take advantage of those opportunities and make it about deliberate.
Look, I was given the job as the host of Canadian Idol because the president of the network liked me.
Right.
And she literally told the production company, you're going to hire this guy. They did not want to hire me. And I had very candid conversations with the producers who became great friends of mine, who said, it took us about 6 or 7 weeks, Ben. And after spending time with you and seeing how you worked, we realized that was the right choice. So you prove yourself. Yeah. And then as everybody does. And that's not to say my life has been easier than anybody else's or harder than anybody else. It's been different.
I think your point about context is everything. I mean, if that's the world that you're living in and you're growing up that way, then that is your reference point. Yeah. And it's different than other people's, but we all have unique experiences that we bring to conversations, bring to work, bring to family, bring to life. Did you guys talk a lot about politics? Was it dinner table politics conversations, or was it like leave it at the office?
No. That's not the Mulroney way.
Okay.
No, that was the family business, and we're all in it in one way, shape, or form. I'm in it from the cheap seats. My sister's in it on the ground floor. My brother Mark is in it in the back rooms, and my brother Nick is sort of the torch bearer for the steady hand and the perspective that my dad had. So I go to him. My brother's Nick is 9 years younger than me, and I go to him for advice all the time.
And each of you would have your own different perspectives. I mean, your sister, of course, as you mentioned, minister in and on the ground floor right now. Are you out pounding signs and knocking doors come election time? You
Oh, yeah.
talked about a family
Yeah.
business.
Oh, yeah,
That's-
absolutely. And to her credit, she did not. The polls suggested she didn't have to campaign, and she was out there as if her life depended on it because she thought the people of her constituency deserved access to their MPP and the person who wanted that job again, and so she acted as she had to earn it, and she went out and earned it.
I think a lot of people reflect on, that era of politics when your dad was the prime minister. It is a time when people were able to reach across the aisle, build coalitions, work together to get things done. There was more civility, perhaps, in the discourse. Is that how you found it then, or did it feel like, the same sort of sparring and jabs that we see all the time today?
It was ruthless.
Yeah.
I mean, the attacks level against my dad were personal. They were exceptionally corrosive and toxic. We didn't have social media then, but it went far and wide on the CBC. I can promise you that. And Dad did not need to build coalitions or consensus. He had the largest majority in the history of Canadian politics by any metric, and yet he still insisted on bringing people in from different perspectives. I mean, it was I'm not comparing Dad to Lincoln, but it was sort of like the team of rivals, right? Like you want those perspectives at the table. You want to hear those voices, and that's how I see the way. I think that I miss the respectful collision of ideas. It doesn't happen in universities anymore. It rarely happens in the media. People shout at each other, or they sit around and agree with each other. And I miss being able to feel safe enough in an environment where you could ask the question that was on your mind and not worry about whether it was out of left field, and not worry about whether someone would infer from that question your entire character.
Right.
And that's exactly the world we're living in right now. That is the most toxic part of public discourse today. I think that, a person's position on any one policy allows somebody else the freedom to infer everything else about who you are. And it's wrong, it's naive, it's juvenile, and doesn't further any debate or discussion.
Well, it's interesting because some of the folks that position themselves, particularly from the left, as these preachers of tolerance and acceptance, there's very little tolerance and acceptance as soon as your position differs, one iota from their own.
Oh yeah, and I mean there are people on the right that are that way as well, but it's far more organized on the left. I think it's ad hoc on the right. It depends on the conversation, it depends on the person, it depends on the community, but by and large, on the left, it's structural.
So your dad was a sort of consensus builder, or at least somebody who made space for those conversations. Yeah. Huge caucus, worked with different.
Oh, if he had listen, he wasn't looking to run everything by consensus. He had his vision, he had his policy, he had his dreams, he had his what he wanted to see happen in the country. But part of that is also convincing people to come on your side. It's not just about saying, okay, floor is open, best idea wins.
Right.
No, that's not. That's an abdication of responsibility.
Right.
It's about saying, here's my idea. Look, Dad at one point was mired in very low polls, and at no point did he ever have issues with his caucus. They followed him until the bitter end because he understood how to make them feel heard, make them feel valued, even if the idea that he was pursuing they knew was going to lead to a really difficult time for them politically. Because he got them to understand and buy into his vision that the directions they were going would ultimately pay off.
Is that a lesson in leadership that you learned from him firsthand? You saw up close, doing those difficult things, even when it's not convenient, not the most popular thing. But
yeah, I believe, and he taught me that political capital is meant to be spent, and if you resign. Or your political career ends and you are at 75% of the polls, then you didn't do everything you could do. Not to suggest that every decision is going to make people unhappy, but big, bold decisions in times of crisis require somebody to say, we're going to fix this, and it's going to hurt, but and I'm going to be the one to pay the political cost, and it's going to hurt you, and it's going to hurt me. It's going to hurt me by the fact that I might not get reelected, but it's going to hurt you temporarily, because when we come out of it, you will be better off. And I could make a very good argument for the vast majority of Dad's policies as they relate to nation building, he was on the right side of that stuff. And so he resigned with very low approval ratings, but the country was better off. And so, yeah, if you leave to a ticker tape parade, you probably didn't do everything you could.
You left a lot of stuff on the field there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
When you're not doing all the work that people pay you for, you are a dad, and you've got a number of kids.
Yes, I do. 3 kids.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, raising them here in the city.
Yes, Brian, John, and Ivy. Brian and John are identical twins, and they're at North Toronto.
Okay.
And Ivy just graduated from Whitney Public School. And so what's going on at TDSB, very concerning to me.
But nice to see the province moving in the direction of action on that, though.
Oh, yeah. Well, I had Paul Calandra, the Minister of Education, on my show, and he was actually giving me the announcement. We recorded it early, so I had him doing the announcement on my show while he was doing it live. So, and look, I watching what's happened. I mean, I was shocked. I follow this stuff pretty closely, more closely than the average purser. I never heard word one of school boards selling off assets to fill funding holes like that.
Operational.
What the hell is that? Like, where was the memo on that? I didn't see that. And so, yeah, so you're going to focus your time on pet projects and wedge issues when you should be focused on running a tight ship so that teachers are supported and students are educated. No. Adults need to be brought into this conversation because you guys are behaving like children.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And people just want to make sure, I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. My 4-year-old will start JK in the fall, and you start thinking about it differently as a parent. You want to make sure that the resources are going to be there. You want to make sure that they're focused on core curriculum, swim things. And, that's really all I'm looking for when it comes to school. I'm not looking for some of the divisive wedge political stuff that has sort of infiltrated into some of the classrooms in the TDSB.
And look, I was at my daughter's graduation, and every teacher choked up whenever they spoke about how much they love their kids. And the principal was a new principal this year, and she couldn't get through her speech. That's how much these kids meant to her. And the old principal, who'd been there for the 6 years that my daughter had been there, he showed up for the graduation because that's how much those kids meant to him. The people in the schools are the best at what they do, and they're the best at what they do because they care more than anybody. Right. And to see a scenario playing out where they might have a request, they might want to requisition X, Y, or Z to the benefit of their students, and they're told, sorry, we don't have the money. And now we're finding out why they didn't have the money. That's a dereliction of duty. I'm sorry. Y'all got to go. We got to take this thing down to the studs.
Yeah. And the province is seeing that now. Yeah. And I think that's going to be hopefully positive.
Yeah.
And the more they do on that front, I think the better, because it's moved in the wrong direction. You guys, you must talk about politics. Then you must talk about the state of the city. You must talk about world events. Is it the same sort of dinner table politics that you had growing up?
It's a little different. I mean, I'm far more passionate about municipal politics, and I'm passionate about all levels of politics. But for some reason, municipal politics gets me the most. And my kids, what they know is that their dad is like a nice guy who holds doors for people and asks them how their day is going. But the second I get in my car, everybody around me is an idiot. And the switch goes off because I've told you before, in order for me not to kill somebody with my car every day, I have to assume that every pedestrian and every cyclist at every interaction with me will break every single rule of the road. Because the moment I assume that they know what their role and responsibilities are, and I assume they're going to do that, that's the moment I kill them. So it's a siege mentality for drivers. And that's how I feel every time I'm in the car.
Yeah, I think like streets in Toronto, you got to have your head on a swivel. And whether you are a driver trying to navigate the bike lanes, because we have different bike lane approaches, you look at the intersection, Bay and Bay and Adelaide, Bay and Richmond is a different sort of treatment on how you make a right-hand turn there than a couple blocks over.
And show me where the city spent 1 penny educating the public as to what this new configuration was. I'm sure they put something up on their website. Not good enough.
No.
Like, sorry, not good enough.
Maybe put out a tweet.
We make all these changes and we just leave it to the end user to figure out. And when they don't get it right, we ascribe negative motivation to them. Oh, it's because drivers are being irresponsible. No, it's because I was taught to juggle with 3 balls. And then one day you turned off the lights, threw up a strobe light and threw 3 more balls at me and said, keep those in the air.
What an analogy. Yeah, no, it's funny. Like, just even driving to City Hall today, there was a guy in the scooter, separate conversation, but in the bike lane there, and the vehicle was unsure. Do they take the lane? It's a broken line. Yeah, they're actually supposed to go right up the curb, but just this very wide, slow movement.
Yeah.
And the scooter doesn't know, do I duck to the right of the car? Do I swing out to the left? And, it's those moments of indecision because people don't know.
Yeah.
That's where you end up running into problems.
And look, again, I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. None of us know what to do at a simple right-hand turn.
Yeah.
As I've started my right turn and I see half a block down is a cyclist, but all of a sudden a pedestrian starts walking. So now I'm stuck. He thinks he has the right of way of never stopping. I think I'm in the middle of my turn and therefore I have the right of way. We're both upset at each other.
And then the cyclist might come and punch the car as they go.
Yeah, and I'll be angry. Now, I don't actually know who's right, but we both believe we are right. And the fault lies with the city for not educating the public.
Right. So your kids get a taste of it when they get
Every time we get in the car.
Oh, yeah. I think city issues, we'll talk a little bit about that, but people are passionate about it because it's their day-to-day experience. It's the frustration that they experience on the TTC or on the streets, or trying to find a place in a neighborhood that they want to live in. It becomes very real for folks. It's not removed. It's not a esoteric conversation, federal government. We're not talking about it's not digital sales taxes.
Yeah, but it's not a tax that you're going to see once a year on a bill that shows up in the mail. It's the everyday stuff. It's your garbage. It's it's the potholes.
Right.
It's traffic. It's every single thing that you interact with on a granular emotional level. That's why municipal politics matters. And the greatest irony is how few people show up to vote in elections in municipal.
Yeah, not enough. I mean, we hit, I think, 40% in the by-election, which was a high number, but it might have been in the 20 percentile in the year before. It's summertime here in Toronto, and we're both raising families. There was an article out a week or two ago calling for an 80s summer. And what they meant by that was the nostalgia, going out and drinking from the water hose.
Yeah.
Sort of come home when the street lights come on.
Yeah.
That sort of vibe. And I remember growing up in Hamilton, that was kind of how we did it.
Not exactly how I did.
That would have been your experience
with the RCMP,
Crown Victoria Security Detail.
Yeah, the gates. Yeah,
but it makes me think about raising my girls here, and I would kind of like them to have that experience.
Yeah. My guys are having that.
Yeah,
we live in a great neighborhood where all of my kids' friends are really very, very close, like walking distance, or sometimes taking the bus. And my boys, on a summer day, is like, hey, I'm going over to my friend's house. Now, after a certain time of day, they can't just say it; they have to ask.
Right.
And so long as they're home by the time we agreed upon, there's no problem. And my daughter yesterday, I said, hey, are you gonna come to the movies with us? She said, nope. My friend just called and wants me to go to the movies with her. She's coming to pick me up in 10 minutes. I was like, great. Like, I'm not. I like that they're social. I like that they are confident enough to make their own plans. And we push back when we think that they're taking too many liberties, but I kind of like that they are self-starters and they are, they make their own plans, so long as they let us know.
This is what we want from the city. You want Toronto to be a city that's family friendly.
Yeah.
You want Toronto to be a city where you want to raise your kids, and yet at the same time you have City Hall that ban street hockey. It's City Hall that tried to ban tobogganing. Sometimes we get the moniker of no fun city.
Oh yeah.
And then you couple that with some of the stuff that you see on the TTC and safety concerns, and it doesn't always feel like the 80s summer is achievable.
No. Well, my favorite story is before your time was the a la carte program, where the city decided that we needed more street food, and rather than just let people buy their carts and set up shop, they decided to redesign the food cart. and it cost $300,000 to redesign it, and it was it's a podcast. It was a piece of shit, and no one used it, and because they also want to make sure that the cultural the different cultures of Toronto were represented. So you had to have certain foods from certain places in certain parts of the city, and there is. I can give you buy-in to a certain extent, but the city wanted to control everything about this, as opposed to saying, all right, let's give some licenses out. And you got your cart, you got a different cart, you got a different cart. Well, so long as they make food safely, no problem. And it was a disaster. It was a disaster. And now we got the cafe TO. Is that the thing?
Yep. That's another program, again, started.
It was a great idea when it started.
Right.
I mean, for COVID, they needed our businesses needed it, and now for some reason it's still going on and it's taking up a lane of traffic.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a couple points there. One is that we never really do the postmortem and revisit the decisions that we made. We just continue to proceed. So Cafe TO is a great example. You go to St. Clair, which is already a constrained right of way because you've got a streetcar there. And you have one patio in isolation on its own.
That's right.
And we never go back and say, does this still make sense?
Yeah.
We just carry on and continue.
And that restaurant, which I like very much, that's more of a grab and go sort of place.
Right.
Like
There's 3 tables.
it really doesn't need it. You're absolutely right. There's certain places where it should work, and I'm sure does work because of traffic and traffic flow. But there are other places where you're creating choke points,
and just having one orphan patio sort of on its own, standalone, doesn't make a lot of sense. But the city does not go back and take a second look and re-examine. Does this policy make sense in the context that we're living in today? And the other piece on the food carts, classic City of Toronto, government in general, you take a program and then you layer on so many different requirements that it makes it so complicated and difficult to navigate. You end up effectively crushing it under its own weight.
Oh yeah, well that's what happened. Yeah,
because you put so many different.
You got to go back and look at this a la carte thing.
Yeah,
it was Toronto being Toronto.
So, I wanted to just talk a little bit before we wrap up about the transition you've made in your career. You obviously started on television, hosting entertainment stuff. Very different than what you do now. I think the dynamic that you would have had with different hosts or different celebrities, folks that you were interviewing is how would you describe that? Less pointed.
Yeah, no, listen, I loved what we did there. I mean, you got to remember that prior to eTalk, there was nothing like that on Canadian TV. We had all the American shows. We had Access Hollywood, Entertainment Tonight, and Extra. That's where you got all of your entertainment news, but there was no one doing it from a Canadian perspective, where yes, we want to talk to the Beyoncés of the world, but we also wanted, in the same sentence, when we talk about Beyonce, we want to elevate Canadian stars. So we said them in the same sentence. So we put them in the same piece. So in the minds of Canadians, their accomplishment was analog.
Right.
And there were no red carpets in Canada.
Right.
And why does that matter? It doesn't matter because I give a shit about asking people who they're wearing. But now that we're doing them in Canada, when I say who you're wearing, they're going to say a Canadian designer. That Canadian designer there's a reason Canadian designers are in a better place today than they were 20 years ago. And one of those reasons is the work that a show like ours did. We took it very, very seriously. We were building the Canadian star system, not because we cared about fluff, but because it's an industry that deserved a shot in the arm. And I think that to me is a great accomplishment. I take great pride in that. There are people who don't understand it and don't want to understand it and stop short. Yes, of course, there was some fluff there. There were Hollywood. Of course there was. That's how you get
people love it though.
But that's how you get 1 million people to tune in.
Right.
Our show, toe to toe, and going up against Entertainment Tonight, the biggest name in entertainment news in the world. We beat them every single night of the week in Canada. Wow. That doesn't happen because people because they like me. It's because they like the product that we were putting out and the stories of Canadians we were telling.
It's interesting. I hadn't appreciated how deliberate that effort was, but you look sort of 20 years on, the seeding and the cultivating of Toronto's media and film scene that you would have been a part of in doing that. The benefits of that are all around us today.
Yeah.
We have one of the most robust film sectors on the continent.
Yeah, no, I was very proud of that. So when I look, the job doesn't define the person, right? The person defines the job, and I helped, I think, build something that we as a show took very seriously. Like we showed up on time and we, as best we could, double, triple check sources. And that's early. If there was a rumor, we called it a rumor. But I think I helped inform that part of that show.
So making the transition from TV to radio to podcast, it's quite a bit different. You know, you're not putting up B-roll and
Oh no, you've got to tell stories differently for sure.
yeah. What was that like?
It took a while. It's been almost 2 years now since I first hosted a show. I liken it to being getting really good at being a race car driver, and then one day somebody comes at you and says, "Okay, now do that same thing but on a motorcycle."
Oh.
And it's the same track. You got the same audience, same weather, same forces of gravity and nature, but the skill set's completely different. And so it takes a while. But like with everything, if you spend time with it, you will get better at it. I don't know how bad I was when I started. I just know I'm better now.
What's that process like for you personally, Ben Mulroney, in honing your craft and getting better at things? Is it feedback loop? Is it talking to different folks? Is it listening to other people?
Yeah. So the one thing we've never done on the show is ask ourselves, what should we do to bring more listeners in? Like we've never asked that question. We said, like, what are stories that matter to us? And what are stories we think are going to matter to our audience? And if it doesn't matter to our audience, how can we make them care about it? Those are the only questions we've ever asked. And like last week, I did something with a guy from a YouTube channel that my sons and I follow. It's called Screen Crush, and it's all about Easter eggs and breaking down trailers for movies. And I always wanted to do a story on the business of Hollywood, but there was never any room for that on ETON. And so I had him on the show, and we talked about these big movies coming out, what the implications are going to be for the movie studios if they fail, and so I sort of laid it out to our listeners. This is why this matters to you, because what you watch in the future could change, and these are billion-dollar industries, and it was a Friday, so I would do that on a Monday. If I do that on a Friday, people are getting ready for the weekend, and people liked it. Yeah, I tell you who really liked it. My sons. They don't care about anybody. They've never watched a single YouTube video I've put out, but they watched that.
Okay.
They went and found it.
Right.
Yeah.
So different audiences, you can bring different guests on there and try different things.
No one at Course has ever told me not to say something, or they've never come to me and said, "Why did you do that? Go through that again." Ever. Nothing. I've never had one person tell me to do my job different.
You're much more pointed, and we said this off the top, in the space that you're in now, but you sort of alluded to this is who you've always been. It's just it's a different format, it's a different type of conversation. You're doing different things.
Yeah.
Do you like letting it all hang out there on the radio now?
Well, firstly, I find some of the most boring people in the world are the ones who are passionate and dedicated to only one thing. Like if they can't, if you work in philanthropy, and if you can't talk about anything but philanthropy, that's gonna be a long dinner to get through. But like George Will, for example, is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. He's a conservative thinker, and he knows more about baseball than any human being alive. That to me is a fascinating person, right? Brad Pitt is an actor who's also sort of an amateur architect. I find that fascinating, and I like pop culture and politics. Why those two things are so why people can't appreciate that those two things can exist in a person's mind simultaneously. I feel bad for those people if they don't realize you can like a lot of stuff and probably be passionate about a lot of stuff.
Do you learn stuff from some of your callers from time to time? Do they challenge your perspective?
Yeah. There's certain things I won't put up with.
Right.
There are false equivalencies, moral equivalencies that I won't take.
You're very good on some of those.
If we're talking about Israel, or if we're talking about the Jewish population of Toronto, and someone calls in and we're talking about the issues of the persecution, the targeting of Jews in Toronto, and someone calls in and starts talking about the quote unquote genocide in Gaza, and I put that in air quotes. If they bring that in as if to justify anything that's happening to Jews on the ground here, I will hang up on them. I will not do that. If you want to talk about that garbage somewhere else, you can. I will not allow you to use my show to normalize anything that has to do with the targeting of Jews in the city. And by the way, I'll go one step further. I would do the exact same thing if it was happening to any other group. It just so happens that 3% of the population are getting 40% of the hate crimes. So yes, they deserve a special amount of attention today.
Well, you sort of answered the question, but we have both been very outspoken on this issue. What's happened to the Jewish community here in Toronto? I'm not Jewish. You're not Jewish. But people ask, like, why are you sticking your neck out there on this file with this issue, given that it's not directly related to you? You've been award winning, like a champion on this. Your advocacy has been recognized, but why do you do it?
Because, well, I'll give you I'll give you my explanation by way of a story. So I used to work, I did some work for Mount Sinai Hospital. I was part of a fundraising team there. And I was sitting with them in our exploratory meeting, and I said, what do you want people to know about Mount Sinai? Because everybody knows what Sick Kids is, and everybody knows what Princess Margaret is. What do you want them to know about this? And they said, and they thought about this, they said, we don't want to be known as the Jewish hospital in Toronto. We want to be known as the Jewish community's gift to the city of Toronto. And if you take it all the way back to where the genesis of that hospital, you know how it was founded? No, I was founded. It was a bunch of Jewish moms whose sons went to medical school, and they couldn't get jobs at any of the hospitals because they were Jewish. So the moms set up Mount Sinai Hospital on Yorkville Avenue. And that's why they started it. And now today they want it to be known as the Jewish community's gift to the city of Toronto. And then when I saw protesters who just happened to accidentally stumble upon protesting in front of Mount Sinai Hospital, we weren't targeting it because it's got a Star of David in its logo. We just happened to be there.
Oh, wasn't that just a coincidence?
Oh, just a coincidence. This is a community that gives of itself to the city. When they have marches or walks, they are peaceful. They are open. There is no anger, and yet these people who are Torontonians who live in the city of Toronto are being targeted for being Jewish. That offends me emotionally, and I guess because I'm not Jewish, maybe, I don't know, people listen a little more. Although some people are suggesting that I'm being paid by Jewish lobbies. I wish I was someone who could afford my mortgage.
Right. Well, it's your advocacy and, more importantly, your moral clarity on that is very appreciated. I hear that all the time. And I think that in a world where it's much easier to sort of keep your head down on things like this, the fact that you stood up strongly for your values and for people who, as you said, are disproportionately being attacked in this city at a rate that I never thought we would see in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that, Nikki. You have a largely Toronto audience, so I just want to sort of wrap there, although your show is national. When you talk about the issues of crime, affordability, gridlock to an audience that goes across Canada, do you hear similar sort of sentiments in different things, or is it disproportionately frustrated here in Toronto?
Well, I was in Ottawa. I was with the mayor, and I was asking about the issues that he has there. He says they're pretty similar to the ones we had here. And
Mark Sucklet.
Yes, and I really like. He's a really great author, and I really enjoyed my time with him. He's a really nice guy. And yeah, he said there are a lot of parallels. Montreal has some of the worst traffic I've ever seen it, but it's different than the traffic here. Because I think it's worse than here because it takes the same. I mean, it's a smaller city,
right?
And it takes the same amount of time to get from one side to the other as it does to get from one side of Toronto to the other, except it's smaller,
right?
And none of the streets make sense, and the closures make no sense. And it took me an hour to get from the airport to my hotel the last time I was there. And the next morning when I left at 5 in the morning to come home, it took 12 minutes to get to the airport. So yeah, in traffic an hour, and we're talking, I think I went 4 or 5 kilometers.
Yeah.
So yes, these issues, I think cities across the country, I'm not an expert in it, but I wouldn't be surprised if we all had the same problem, which is punting the ball on infrastructure and maintenance for years and years and years. Like I like to say, if we as a city had built 1 kilometer of underground transit every year since the 60s, think about how much what we would 1 kilometer. That's all we would have had to do to have a network twice, 3 times the size of what we have today, and sending investment of 1 kilometer of underground tunnel every year.
Successive governments had taken a 30-year hiatus for building transit here, and now we'll have to build it every single year up till you and I are in the ground.
Yeah.
But it seems frustrating for a lot of Torontonians that we can't even get the basics right. I can't ride the transit that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And so when people are yelling at me on Twitter, like, the answer is not more highways, it's more transit. Yeah, sure. I appreciate that. But given that the transit is decades away, we need to make use of the existing capacity on our roads that we have right now. And, I had a motion last week just to open up King Street, which is our transit priority corridor, at a time when there's literally no streetcars on it, allow vehicles to use that to help alleviate some of the impact on Richmond and Adelaide. All that is to say, when common sense proposals are on the table, practical solutions, and the fact that City Hall is so hardwired to say no, I think that's why people get so frustrated. So what's your view? You talk to a lot of different people. Why can't we get the basics right in the city anymore?
I think that the left has been very good at populating city staff. I mean, when I had to ask a question, but when I saw the study that came out, if the 3 levels of government can't agree on what to do with Billy Bishop Airport, we should turn it into a park. And I said, time is binary. Money is binary. You spent time and money on this stupid proposal for a scenario that will never come to pass. But I know what they were doing. They were trying to lay the groundwork for that conversation so that 30 years from now, it might become a park. Right? That is a nonsense use of time and money. But there is ideology at play here. I'm a best practices guy. Show me where bike lanes work. I want bike lanes there. Show me where more lanes of traffic work. That's where I want lanes of traffic. I am not ideological about this stuff. I want the most robust network of bike lanes around this city where cyclists can get from one end to the other in a way that doesn't impact major arteries.
Right.
And the major artery I'm on all the time is Yonge Street. And it angers me to no end when I texted you because I stood there for 10 minutes drinking a coffee, looking down the street on a beautiful day. There was a cloud in the sky and not a single bicycle came by except for I think a 2 and 4 and 4 and 2 of them were e-bikes delivery food.
Right.
That is no one is going to tell me that lane is being used the way it was intended. And no one is going to tell me that they weren't starting to put down permanent structures when it was called a pilot project. I watched them do it. And I don't care what people say. I don't care what studies you show me. I live there. I breathe it. I'm on that street every day. Anybody who says that it's working the way it was intended is either a liar or has a different agenda.
Yeah.
And that angle. So to go back to your point, why I think ideology has something to do with it. You're trying to shoehorn a reality into a city that cannot handle it. We were never built with broad boulevards. We don't have the Champs-Élysées that is 16 lanes wide where you can have bike lanes on either end. Yonge Street was 2 narrow lanes for each on either side. You want to turn one into a bike lane? Take the world as it is. Toronto is what it is. We had an opportunity after the First World War to, as they said, Parisify this city, where they were going to essentially tear down the southern part of the city, and we were going to have this massive traffic circle right where the Four Seasons Center is right now, and it was going to be called Vimy Circle, and you were going to have broad boulevards everywhere, and it was going to be named after World War I moments. And then what happened was the stock market crash, and it was a ballot issue on the mayoral election, so it didn't pass. So we were stuck with this small town infrastructure, and now they're trying to pretend that it's not. They're trying to pretend it is Paris. No, we had a chance to turn into Paris, and we didn't.
There's a lesson in there about leadership and having the humility to acknowledge when something's not working and going back and making the commitment to fix it.
Yeah.
And I think you look at the Blue or West bike lanes, for example, on the Mississauga border, same thing. You took literally 50% of the road capacity, 2 of the 4 lanes, and you turned them over to 0.00001 of the road users.
Yeah.
And I think the vast majority of Torontonians would agree with your position that bike lanes, when and where they make sense.
Yeah.
They got to be safe and sensible.
But look, we have to start from certain fundamental truths. And anybody who says bike lanes don't cause congestion is talking to me like I'm a friggin' idiot. Like, I'm sorry. Let's talk about what happened under John Tory with the traffic blitz, right? We are going to stop people from double parking. We're going to stop delivery trucks, and we're going to target them and blitz them and get them out of the way. Why? Because one single car that double parks causes a knock-on effect of traffic. Can we agree on that, right? So what is a bike lane if not a permanently parked car all the way up and down Yonge Street? Yeah. That's what it is. So you're telling me that the single car causes traffic, but the bike lane doesn't? Now you're talking to me like I'm an idiot, and now I'm upset.
Well, it's the line, bikes don't cause congestion. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, but taking away half of the capacity for the same amount of vehicles, that does cause congestion.
Look, right now you have your own seat and I have my seat. If we took that seat away and you and I sat here, would we be as comfortable?
Probably not.
Like it's spatial reasoning 101. Yeah. Like this is, we live in a 3D world, it's very easy to understand. You take space away, there's less space. And the fact that we indulge these people with an axe to grind and a wedge issue to promote, that we're going to let them say bike lanes don't cause congestion? Are we smart or are we idiots?
Yeah, and I think people do not appreciate the gaslighting that the city engages in sometimes. Like, again, your neighborhood better than the bureaucrats at City Hall or the downtown councilors, right? And so you have that experience out there, and you can tell, like, take a 24-hour average where it includes times at like 3 a.m. when nobody's using it. Calculate that into an average, you're going to have different numbers. But talk to me about rush hour.
Peak hours, about peak. Listen, you believe in that bike lane on Yonge Street? Put up a counter. Yeah. They have it in Montreal. Put up a counter. Show us how accountable you are. Make sure it's there. It's run by an independent third party. Put up a counter. Show me how many people are using it. I guarantee you, I would put dollars to donuts, as my dad used to say. There's no way it is being used at the level that people are saying it is. And once we find that out, then those people who've been lying should be held accountable.
Right. Well, listen, you've got a lot of common sense and practical views that I think a lot of people would be vigorously nodding their head with. And I know that's why they tune into your show, and, people listen all the time. I hope at some point you think about another capacity where you can lead and serve, and sometimes elected office is a way to do that. Just something to keep in mind. Love to see you out there. Love listening to you. Before we wrap, though, just a couple quick things here on Toronto. Where do you like to hang out in the city?
In the summertime, honestly, in my backyard. There's no place I'd rather be. It's like having a whole other room in our house, and it's nice to get out. I was just at the Toronto Rib Fest a few days ago. I've been going since 2015.
Okay.
With my friends and my family, and we sample all the ribs.
Okay.
And then we build our own score sheet. We are unofficial judges, and we judge it every year. And this year, Camp 31 won, in case you care. And
is that out in Brantford?
No. It's at in Etobicoke at Centennial Park.
Oh, come on.
Yeah,
right.
So
Vocal winners.
Yeah, it's every Canada Day weekend, and because it's a long weekend, we went on the first day. We have a system where we get there right before it opens. So the ribs are ready because they've been cooking them, and we get a half rack from each one. And so this year there were 8 ribbers, and so we got 8 of them. And then we go sit down and we judge and we eat and we leave.
So I'm going to have to go out to Etobicoke's Camp 31, award-winning ribs. And just, I didn't expect to go in this direction, but got to ask, are you more for the Carolinian style of sauce, which is the vinegar-based, or the Texas style, which is more the molasses sugar?
The Texas. I'm a Texas. I mean, I love any rib, to be honest. It's like pizza, right? They eat the worst pizza is good pizza. But yeah, I err on the side of sweet.
Okay, very good. Favorite restaurant? Favorite restaurant. I don't want to get you in trouble, but I'm just looking for.
Well, it's in my neighborhood. The place that never goes wrong. They treat me so well, and I just love going there either for lunch or for dinner. Is Quanto Bassa.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
yeah. I mean, there are a lot of restaurants that I love. And so hard to pick one, but because it's in my neighborhood and I love supporting them, they're so nice to me. Like, yeah, really, really nice.
It is good food in there. And you mentioned, you alluded, you drive in the city. Did you do the transit? Did you ever get on a bike?
Yeah, I know. So I take transit. And I'm unfortunately I don't take it at peak hours.
Yeah.
And my experiences have always been good, to be honest. But I when somebody tells me they had a bad experience, I listen. And my kids take it to school, and I'll get an alert that they were late for school. I was like, "What's going on?" It's like the TTC was shut down on the way up.
Yeah.
So it is what it is.
Always getting throttled online.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, we're gonna leave it there. Ben, thanks so much for joining us on For the Love of TO. Folks, you can find more Ben Mulroney all over the place.
Ben Maloney, that's never a good idea.
Yeah, people like it. They like it. You can get them on social media, all the platforms, and Ben shows weekdays from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. on 640, or you can check out his podcast when it goes up on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. Ben, this was a slice. Thanks so much.
See you next time. Yep.
This is For the Love of TO.